Hey everybody, Jim, Joshua, and Scott Collura, direct from the Empire State. That is New York State, right? The Empire State? Yes. We are here to keep it real this week, talking about DC movies, some big shakeups going on over there on the Warner Brothers lot as a result of fallout from Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. It didn't break the $1 billion mark. It still made a ton of money.
Yeah.
However, the audience reaction to it and the quick drop-off, everything we've covered before, is definitely shaken them quite a bit.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reports about Justice League getting kind of retooled as they go. Now we knew Ben Affleck has been up to an executive producer, which is generally a token title, but it just means he's going to have more creative control other than just playing Batman. And he is going to direct that standalone Batman movie. So the news we found out this week is that Warner Brothers has essentially put two people in charge of their DC movies.
Well, they started
label, shingle, whatever they
call
call
it. DC Films.
Yeah, it's
now.
called DC Films
Films.
now. They started a new label.
Take that, Marvel Studios, right? Yeah, so DC Films, and it's going to be Geoff Johns, DC Comics creator extraordinaire and creative
Chief Creative
consultant.
Officer at DC Entertainment.
And an executive, a Warner Brothers executive VP named John Berg, running that film department of DC. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's start with the obvious one. What do we think of this news, this kind of shakeup, and what do we think of Geoff Johns taking on such a big role in a movie company, let alone just being the comics guy? Joshua, let's start with you as our
for those who
commentator.
aren't familiar with Geoff Johns, he's like a long time, very beloved, or I guess some people probably hate him, some people probably love him. But from what I understand, from where I said, he's a great writer and does some of the best comic books on the shelf these days.
I loved his Green Lantern stuff back in the day.
No, yeah, he made Green Lantern. He went from who's that kind of weird guy who's weak to yellow to one of DC's biggest franchises, second to Batman. And that was so popular that led to the Green Lantern movie, which he had a part on. Obviously, that movie didn't work out very well. And that's sort of with him being.
So that's why you put him in charge of your movie.
Yeah, put him in charge of your movies.
Yeah.
That's sort of the one big the thing against him going into this is that he was a part of Green Lantern and that didn't work out. But I think everything he's done since then, especially on the TV side, just Arrow, especially Flash, Supergirl, Legend of Tomorrow, he's had a hand in all of that. That's what the job of the chief creative officer is.
He was also involved with BVS.
Yes, and he was executive producer on BVS. On that, it's hard to say how much he actually had to do with it.
Yeah.
You get the sense that, because I've read a lot of his comic books, I've read a lot of his Batman stuff, his Superman stuff. His Batman is not like what I saw on screen, and his Superman couldn't be farther from what I saw on screen. So I have a feeling if he had a say, then it wouldn't be like that. You get a hopeful, optimistic Superman, a cool guy you'd actually want to hang out with.
Would you have a Batman who murders people?
No, he would probably not be murdering people, from what I understand. So I feel like this, creatively, it sounds like a really good idea to have him step up and take this role. I feel like from the beginning we've been saying they need their Kevin Feige of Marvel Studios, who's been sort of the mastermind, who knows the movies but is a very big comic book fan and could guide all these movies from a business and creative decision viewpoint. So the fact that I think they needed that at Man of Steel. Now it's a little too late because they pretty much let Zack Snyder steer the boat, and he hit an iceberg.
A Batberg.
Yeah, a Batberg. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and he is. They're currently filming Justice League Part 1 in London, and I can only imagine how tense it must be. Mm-hmm. Not that we're hearing reports of tension on the set, but tension between Warner Brothers execs and Snyder, because now it's he was their go-to guy, and everyone's essentially said, we're rejecting your vision. And, it's a little too late to do too much, but they are making changes.
He must feel under siege right now in London from the studio, but the studio is all over him about every decision that's being made.
Yeah.
They said they went from being confident in him to now totally second-guessing him and second-guessing everything that they're doing. And it seems a real shame that this is where it's all wound up, especially when you think back when Batman versus Superman was announced at Comic-Con, whenever that was 3 years ago, it was so exciting and awesome.
Yeah.
Who could have predicted that this is where we would wind up, where they're having to? It feels like they're rethinking things from the floor up, right? Because we're hearing about. We're going to talk about this, I guess, soon. But we're hearing about this now. There's a Harley Quinn standalone movie in the works, right? We're hearing stuff about. But Booster Gold there's a Booster Gold rumor going around that script is kind of
it's Greg Berlanti's working on it,
right? Yeah. So the Flash is now they got rid of the director on the Flash. Aquaman, it sounds like they're rethinking their approach to that, and that James Wan may or may not.
I think he's sticking with it. He kind of did his social media thing of implying that he's staying on board. Maybe now with Geoff Johns having more of a say,
right?
It will jive more with what he wants to do, which is something more fun.
Right. It's DC's always been in a tough spot ever since Marvel became what it is. Starting with Iron Man, where they were very locked into Chris Nolan making these super popular, super successful Batman movies. And Nolan wasn't interested in he wasn't going to throw the Flash into his Batman movie, wasn't going to have Booster Gold show up, and so they were locked into that until he was done. And at that point, they were so far behind Marvel Studios that they've been playing catch up. And there's of course this need to not be seen as replicating or trying to imitate Marvel, which is a difficult thing, but you're just making superhero movies ultimately, shared universe. So I think they've been in this tough call, and they put all their chips in with Zack Snyder, and now here we are at $860 million. Which
it's strange because when you think about it, the short window of time of 2008, we have The Dark Knight comes out in Iron Man.
Yep.
Iron Man was not a sure thing. We did plenty of stuff in Marvel Phase 1 of like, hey, if one of these doesn't work, the whole thing, Avengers won't work. If Thor doesn't work, if Captain America doesn't work, like, what do you do? So it was not a sure thing. But by the time you get to 2012, when Dark Knight Rises is coming out, you have Avengers opening, becomes like one of the biggest movies ever, and then everything had been validated, I mean, they made Thor work, they made Captain America work. There was so much cold feet. It's easier to forget, like, they have such a Midas touch now that everything was a huge gamble, and they did have stumbles along the way, but DC is just, they don't have the luxury of failing, which sounds weird to say luxury, but it's like, if Marvel screwed up in Phase 1, they could have recovered by bringing in a different character. If Captain America didn't work, it could have been a standalone thing.
Yeah.
It would have sucked.
Well, they had it with the Incredible Hulk was this kind of an iffy thing. It wasn't a big hit, right?
And this sort of idea of sort of putting a Band-Aid and fixing of what we have in order to move forward. Geoff Johns, that's his specialty. If you go and look at Green Lantern, again, he was sort of this hokey thing, my weakness is the color yellow. But he went in and looked at that.
Cool weakness.
He didn't erase anything. He just brought back the essence of the character, of what originally made that character appealing, and built on it and created this new mythology. And it was a grand success. He's done that for Flash as well. Right now, actually, the New 52, something is that DC did in the comic books. And a lot of people didn't like the New 52. I like a lot of things about it, but I can say it was surely was not well received overall by everyone, and a lot of things were that they changed characters dramatically and they made things darker or trying to be like grittier where it didn't need to be. And so what Geoff Johns is actually doing right now, or just finished doing, I'm assuming, because DC is getting ready to relaunch all of their comic books again, called DC Rebirth, using the story of...
New logo, too.
Huh?
New logo, too.
Yes, new logo and everything. New looks for all the characters and stuff. But and Geoff Johns has been meeting with all the different writers and artists and talking to them about their books. So he's like... And finding and talking to them, like, what is it about the Flash that we like so much? What can we do to bring him back to where he was before the New 52, and while building on what happened to him in the New 52 to bring his story forward? So I feel like because he's able to do that so well and like understand the appeal of the characters and tell stories that are engaging and entertaining and dramatic, not just fun but entertaining all around, right? I think by doing that. Be able to do that with the comic books will be a boon to the movies.
Well, I want to ask you about that. How much do you think, and I know you get told things in confidence by different people, so make sure you don't put your foot in your mouth, but how much of like the new,
Jim.
how much of the new 52 though do you think was Warner Brothers saying, well, we're going to be doing darker movies, so we want you to go ahead and make this stuff darker too? Like, how much of it is corporate pressure from people who don't understand this? Because now I feel like the Rebirth stuff, if they're addressing it in the comic form, and now I know it's, you know, the timing is not tied because obviously BVS coming out is a recent thing, but I just find it a little odd because the new looks in Rebirth, some of them look close to the movies.
Yeah, Harley Quinn and the new Joker seem to look a lot like Margot Robbie and Jared Leto.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't really say. From when I ever talked to the publishers, you know, like Jim Lee and Dan DiDio and everyone else, that's sort of the higher ups, I don't get the pressure, the impression that they're being pressured by you know, corporate masters to be like, make this just like the movie. And I've been told before of just like, oh, are you going to, you know, make? Well, I'll ask, are you going to make this just like this TV show? And like, well, a TV show's on for like 5 or 6 seasons, but the comic book is sort of on the shelf forever. So you shouldn't really just match things up just because. You should do what makes a good comic book story at the time. And of course, I think if something's really successful in the movies, it would be silly not to take the essence of what's so good about that and put it in the comic books. But overall, no, I don't think that they're being told for the New 52, you have to go darker because we're making darker movies, or now you have to do a rebirth because we're changing course on the movies. The Rebirth was sort of like based on the number, or sorry, New 52 was like a special number. So now that all the comics have reached they've reached issue 52, that's when they're changing. So there's no way we would know that Rebirth would sync up with this new course correction for the movies.
And that is what it is. It is a course correction for the DC films. Overall, though, I mean, Geoff Johns, and you addressed this a little, somewhat, Joshua. You know, he knows the comic book medium, you know, perfectly.
Yeah.
But
it's not
the movie genre, and it's a different medium. It's a visual medium, yes, but there are different disciplines, and there are things in Marvel. Their movies show this. There are things you can do in the comics that you have to change for the movies.
Yeah. Kevin Feige was not a comic book guy who became a studio exec. He was. He went to film school, right?
Yeah.
With you.
Yeah, actually, it was the same. We graduated just different programs. We didn't really know each other, but we had mutual friends.
He was a comic book fan the way any of us are.
Yeah.
But a movie guy.
Yeah.
Right. So, just because Geoff Johns is a great comic book creator, does that mean that he can make great movies? And
think about Frank Miller. I mean, Frank Miller tried his hand at directing. We got The Spirit, and yeah, sure, he co-directed Sin City or whatever, but you know, I did a set visit for The Spirit, and no, he's not a filmmaker. Look, he did RoboCop sequels and all that, and I just feel like just because you're great at one medium doesn't mean those same skills apply to something else.
Yeah.
You know, just because you're a great football player doesn't mean you can play baseball.
Right. Well, that's why I think they paired him with John Berg, right?
Yeah.
But who is
I don't
that?
know anything about him aside from his job title.
Yeah,
so
I don't know anything
I feel
about
like we're
him
going to
either.
learn a lot more about him.
I mean, I don't know what movies he shepherded or really championed as an executive there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe is he the guy that was like, Zack Snyder's our man? Like, I don't know.
Probably not.
And I don't think.
Perhaps
even if you ask him, I don't know if.
Perhaps his superpower is to make good superhero movies.
Well, I think the fact that they chose 2 people is an admission that, you know, Johns is not, you know, he's got the comic book knowledge, but he's not a filmmaker. And this other guy, Tom Berg, I'm assuming knows the movie business in and out, but is not as big on comic books. So I think by choosing 2 people instead of just choosing one to just get the one Kevin Feige role, they're saying, hey, this needs to be a partnership of these 2 guys.
It's a buddy movie.
And together they can do good work.
I'm getting too old for this.
we ain't partners, we ain't buddies, and we ain't friends. Or I see them doing the Batman Forever. Friends, no. Partners.
But this has been the ongoing problem with the DC movies, right? Because remember the chatter that they wanted Chris Nolan to fill that Godfather role, right?
Yep.
They even got him to serve as he had the producer's credit on Man of Steel, right? Which, how much do they actually have to
doesn't
do?
Doesn't he have something on BVS?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
He's
In the
out.
very beginning stages, I thought there was a mention of it. Actually, it was almost a news story that his name wasn't on the BVS.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. He was like, I see this one coming. Like, I'm out.
So it was Nolan, and then it was Snyder.
Yeah.
Snyder kind of inherited it, but he directed Man of Steel.
Remember there was that executive too, what's her name, Diane Nelson, who was supposed to be like a liaison
and she's
or
still
whatever.
around, but she's not.
I still don't quite understand what her function is.
Yeah.
They're like, but we should point out that Warner Brothers, this is a sort of top-down reorg because they also now put executives in charge of, you're going to handle the Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts stuff. You're going to handle animation or whatever, and you're doing DC. And you get anything probably like Buddy Cop. I don't know. They do a lot of crime movies.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. But this same week we also found out, as you said, Scott, that they're developing a Harley Quinn spin-off movie now, not an origin movie and not a solo film, with Margot Robbie. She pitched it.
Yeah.
And they loved it. And it's going to be her producing and starring in this. I mean, they know that she's already the breakout of this movie, and it hasn't even opened yet. But it's going to feature other female DC characters, both superhero and supervillain characters. Joshua and I did a conversation about this the other day, but I want to get your thoughts, Scott. What do you think about a Harley spinoff?
Well, I think first of all, I think it's just really cool that. The way the story was reported is that Margot Robbie was just doing her research on Harley, reading comic books, and fell in love with the character so much that she pitched this movie. I believe brought in the screenwriter herself to work on the pitch.
Who they won't say except that she's a woman.
Right, yeah. I think that's awesome that this beautiful movie star is reading Harley Quinn comics and into him.
That's the Comic-Con come up to the mic and say, I think you're beautiful, I love you. Aw, thank you. Do you have a question? That's that moment in Hall H. I'm sorry, go on.
I just think it's cool. I mean, she's on the verge of being a really big star, I think. And and this is what she's choosing to pursue. So I think that's really exciting, and I think it feels in a way to go it's sort of the opposite direction that a lot of the DC stuff has already gone, which is to sort of force feed a certain direction. Like, we have to get to Justice League, and we have to do this, and this. We have to have the Flash and Aquaman, and and then this feels more organic or something. Like, I love this character, I want to make a movie about this character. Let's figure out, and it's going to be Birds of Prey, it's going to be Batgirl's going to be in it, all the cool girl characters or whatever, women characters. It just feels like more like a natural sort of way to make a movie, and to create something. And that's what I find to be exciting about it. On top of which, she looks great as Harley Quinn in the trailers.
She looks like Harley Quinn to me. I mean, she already looks like she's gonna steal the show in that. And Joshua and I were talking about this in our conversation the other day, and it was either you or me who said, like, more people are talking about her as Harley Quinn than they are a major movie star like Will Smith as Deadshot.
Right.
And probably a little bit more than Jared Leto as Joker, but I think the weird anecdotes keep his name out there. But
I think also it's like, because DC really, with Batman, Superman has just like, it's just like we can do anything at this point. Like, and Suicide Squad 2, where we see there's magic and there's a crocodile man and stuff. So it's like anything is on the table. So like, what female characters could co-star with Harley? I mean, the sky's the limit. Can we get Zatanna?
I mean, Katana's like Suicide Squad, so maybe she comes back if she survives it.
I think you mentioned Poison Ivy.
I said in our conversation, I want Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah.
Marjorie Terrell herself.
Jim's trying to wish this into existence.
It worked with Hugo Weaving as Red Skull, and it worked with Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. I'm going for the hat trick, people. So I think it'd be Will
they just be Gotham City type Batman
like
family
Gotham
characters?
City
Do you think,
Sirens or something?
I feel like
that?
you start there, but then you throw in some curveballs.
Like Power Girl, or
what if she has to go up against Wonder Woman?
My mind would blow.
Although Wonder Woman just kick all their asses, like it's not even a fair fight.
Wonder Woman's she's off, she's busy.
Yeah, keep it street level. Maybe take a but
she's
this
fighting a Minotaur somewhere.
Well, I think it's also interesting in that we're talking about how they're doing a course correction. I should point out that a year or so ago, when they finally announced their lineup through 2020, we did a podcast on how we thought this was a great strategy for DC. Strategy and execution are two different things, people. I just want to point that out. It sounds great to say we're going to have Shazam, we're going to have Green Lantern, and we have this diverse casting, all that jazz. But if you screw up right out the gate, like you're not, strategy is shot.
The big statistic that you actually brought up to me earlier, Jim, before we started recording, was just that the return audience on Batman v Superman, huge opening, but the next weekend it was like a record opening and then a record drop for how many people were not showing up.
All the demos too of people just checking out.
Yeah.
You know?
So what's going to make them show up to the next movie that's not as big as Batman v Superman when you have a whole film slate?
Well, this is the problem.
They want return customers, and it's.
This is why everyone's getting fired.
Yeah.
Well, this is almost like
promoted.
It's not 100% a disaster. Still, the movie made money, but it didn't make the $1 billion, and it's going to be ultimately, I think it was Forbes who had the thing on, like it's going to turn less of a profit ultimately, or be more profitable than Man of Steel was.
Right.
But it's really more. The frustrating thing is that the movie failed critically and didn't grab audiences.
Yeah.
But it didn't bomb enough that you have to scrap it 110%. Like, you still have Affleck that people like, that want to see more of him. But there is so much more pressure now on Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad, imagine if one of the Marvel Phase 2 movies ran into this, and all of a sudden you're looking at Guardians of the Galaxy like, you better deliver.
Right.
Like, Guardians was just it might work, if not, they just won't make another one. Like, now suddenly it's up to Suicide Squad to be like, you better work. And the Hollywood Reporter story that broke the news about this Warner Brothers DC Films kind of reorg said that there are some issues with Act 3 of Suicide Squad that they're trying to address. I mean, we didn't know about reshoots for action and all that sort of thing. Look, a lot of movies have Act 3 stuff that they go back and do reshoots for. It's actually not. If this was any other movie, if this was just some Dwayne Johnson action movie, nobody would care.
Yeah.
It's just business as usual. But because it's in the geekosphere, we
and everything DC is under the microscope now as well.
Yeah.
So I do think despite the problems of Batman versus Superman post-release, Suicide Squad still, in the bigger picture, is not under the same sort of pressure. Because the general audience, it isn't, I don't know, I think they approach Suicide Squad as something sort of different, and they don't think of it as, Batman versus Superman is the two most famous superheroes, basically, right? There was a lot at stake there. This is more of a weird little, almost a Guardians type project in a way.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if the Joker wasn't in it, most of those characters no one would be able to name. How many characters
be
can your mom
Mystery Men
name
at that point?
Suicide Squad,
None, probably.
But think about the amount, like for Harley Quinn now, with this reorg and the kind of tonal shift that they're going to see, doubling down on Harley Quinn as a breakout character is really smart, because she is, a hot up-and-comer of an actor. You have a character that is beloved by, 2 generations now? Like, she's been around for 20-something years. And she moves merch.
Yeah.
And she's a huge seller as far as comic books go. She's got a solo series. She's in the Suicide Squad team book. She's got a Harley Quinn, like little black book where she goes and teams up with somebody. And she's got Harley and Harley Quinn and her gang of Harleys or something like that. Where there's a bunch of other people who want to be just like her, like Harvey Quinn and like all these other people.
So is Harvey Quinn like a Two-Face?
No, it's not. It just
a guy
happens to
named
be because Harvey sounds like Harley, so they just made a new character. But yeah, so she,
Firestein type.
So and I feel like every other month she's got like a new statue coming out, new toys, new merchandise. So she moves tons of merch. She's huge in comic books right now. And she has the most potential out of any characters, certainly in that movie, to spin off into her own thing.
What sort of role do you think Geoff Johns, it wasn't mentioned in this, but what sort of role do you think he could play in the Harley Quinn spin-off film, in terms of, like, are there particular characters that are tied to her that he's taken a crack at writing that he could, that would give us some kind of impression of what they could do with it.
Well, I just know. Well, I can't actually think of an instance he has particularly written her, but he's written several like Batman stories that are really good. So he knows the Batman mythos of where she like spawned out of, and really it's just a matter of him looking at what makes her appealing and capturing the essence of her. But all the hard work will kind of already be done in Suicide Squad of like setting her up. And I know Johns is working on Squad right now because that's coming up next. So I'm sure he's already there. He's in the kitchen, helping to make sure that comes out and it tastes good. Sorry, I was trying to run with that metaphor.
We should also mention that Geoff Johns is co-writing the Batman with Ben Affleck, right? So
and that Affleck will direct. They confirmed that.
Right. Yeah. So that's got to be a hugely important film for them. Especially after Batman versus Superman, right? So
I have high hopes for that one. I do think like these reports about a Booster Gold movie being back on. There were some reports recently about Lobo. I think you're also looking at not just the MCU, and we've mentioned this before, but also the Deadpool effect. I mean, Deadpool will end up making more money domestically, meaning North America, than BVS did.
Yeah.
Now,
crazy.
BVS made a lot more money overseas, but come on, this time last year, if somebody said, oh, Deadpool's going to make more than BVS, nobody, it would have been, but this is a really, it's a pretty big chunk of humble pie they got to eat here in this one. And so I do wonder if like the Deadpool effect of like, okay, let's look at Booster Gold. He's kind of a meta kind of guy. And then you look at Lobo. He's your crazy, probably can do an R-rated version of that.
Right.
Is that really going to happen? Like Lobo's in the works
as well? It's been in the works for like ages, but there was a report recently, like they're going back out to writers, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny we had this DCU schedule, or just DCEU, I should say, DC Extended Universe schedule.
I saw you emailed about that the other day, didn't you?
Yeah.
You corrected someone about that.
It's like, hey, watch out. So they have this big schedule that they released, of like all the characters we're gonna get. Yeah. But yet, of all the ones we're hearing about now, I'm like, where do all these fit in? Batman, Harley Quinn, Lobo, if that happens, Booster Gold. Are they just gonna
I wouldn't get my hopes
Cyborg
up
not gonna get a movie anymore?
Yeah, I wouldn't get too excited for that Cyborg movie anytime soon.
No.
As long as we get the Green Lantern movie in 2020, Green Lantern Corps, I'll be happy. If not, some people are gonna hear some things.
Well, isn't Cyborg now? Aren't they? They're taking the team up approach, right? Isn't Cyborg in the Flash movie? That's the latest.
That was something that Deborah Snyder, Zack Snyder's wife, who's also a producer in these films, kind of let slip.
Okay.
You know what? I'll believe this Flash movie when I see it,
right?
Because they dropped Seth Grahame-Smith.
Right.
It would have been a first-time director. They're not, and according to some reports, they just want a more experienced hand to helm that movie. Honest to God, let's see how Justice League shakes out.
Yeah.
I bet you they're at this point. I think they're going to play it safe, double down on their Batman stuff, get that Batman solo movie, get that Harley Quinn spinoff.
Yeah. See what happens.
Try and see what you could do with Suicide Squad sequel, but that's going to be further off because David Ayer, the director, and Will Smith are doing this thing for Netflix. Next.
It's also contingent on Suicide Squad in August.
Performing.
Depending on how it does. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, I bet you they'll make that Harley Quinn movie regardless because she's gonna sell merch, and it keeps those characters in the public consciousness while they try and figure out if Justice League.
Yeah, but it's also Joker and Batman, if you want, can be in it.
Killer Croc, if he makes it through the rest of the movie. I mean, I honestly am curious to see which characters they actually kill off in Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it would be a mistake to kill Killer Croc. I want him around.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I feel like he's big enough that you know who he is, but not big enough that you can't kill him.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting about. I want to do like sort of like the Vegas odds of who we think is going to die. Stay tuned for that.
I don't know anything about that. I'm just guessing from looking at that trailer. Because you look at certain sequences and then he's not in the sequence that looks like it's like later.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, did he not make it?
And maybe
it's
they broke up into teams. And let's go get a snack. He's a crocodile.
I really like Adewale Akinyi Agbaje.
Oh, wow.
as Killer Croc. He's a nice guy. I've gotten to
is a
meet
nice
him a
guy,
few
yeah.
times.
I talked to him on the set of Thor: The Dark World when he was in full curse.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I talked to him in full Killer Croc makeup.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so occasionally
good
we'll
at
meet
putting that
him
makeup
as
on.
just a regular guy.
Yeah, I won't recognize him.
He needs to team up and do a movie with Gugu and Batara, and then we'll be great, you know?
Jim likes to show off that he can say complicated names.
You grew up with the name Vejvoda, you learn to get some empathy for folks. But overall, I mean, are we less optimistic or more optimistic now about DC Films' future in light of this reorg, this shakeup? Scott?
I guess having seen what Zack Snyder did with Batman versus Superman, which I didn't care for, I'm more optimistic now that they're changing course and they're not relying on his vision, because I don't think he understands I don't think he understands the DC universe. I don't think he's the right guy for it.
I don't think he gets Superman.
Yeah, so I'm more optimistic that they realize that and they're course correcting, but I'm not excited for it yet. You know, I hope to become excited for these movies,
Yeah.
but right now I just am kind of, you know, hoping things work out. You know, it's
So
not
it all
like,
depends on Suicide Squad for you. What if you walk out of Suicide Squad, you're like, ugh. Is that it for you? I'm just curious.
well, I mean, I work at IGN, so I'll probably still see all the movies, right? But I mean,
Whether you
for
want
me,
to or not.
for me, it's all about Marvel right now. You know, I just think they're in that sweet spot. You know, after seeing Civil War, it's just I hate to compare the two, because I know I'll get flamed for that in the comment section. But I just don't think that. Same with the X-Men movies. You know, X-Men Apocalypse is fine, I guess. But like they're just not operating on the same level that the MCU is. You know?
Joshua, are you more or less excited now?
I'm more optimistic, definitely. I mean, we've only gotten 2 movies in the DC Extended Universe, and they've been by the same person. So it's like, of course, well, if we didn't like the first one, you probably weren't going to like the second one either. But now we're finally going to get our first non-Zack Snyder movie, you know, Suicide Squad, and then
Before we get our third one.
Yes, and then he is doing Justice League Parts 1 and 2, but then we are getting a Wonder Woman movie by a different director, and then assumedly we're getting, you know, Flash and Aquaman and everything else down the line. So I feel like once we actually get to see more of these movies, it'll be good. But with Geoff Johns steering the ship, I feel like that's like been the dream of like, oh, he's so good at what he does with the comic books and what we've seen him do on TV. Let him do that for the entire DC universe. Let him act as the Kevin Feige, and now he's doing that with someone who knows the movie business. I think yes, like this is what we asked for. If they fail from here, maybe these movies just weren't meant to be made. But
and I do hope they give him actual like leverage, actual power, not just a token title.
Well, so that's the thing. We don't really know, right?
Yeah. You have to assume he did not have a lot of power, and that he's been moved into a position of power where he will have a lot of say in what happens.
But does he know how to navigate? I mean, like, it's Hollywood, right? Like navigating the corridors of the executive floors at Warner Brothers. I mean, that's an art all itself, and he's not. You know, he's a comic book guy. He's not used to that.
They're all fiefdoms over there
He's
too.
moved up
in
that company, you know, a lot. You don't get to be CCO because you're just a comic book writer. He has a lot of many talents. He's written for TV.
Yeah.
You know, even Smallville. I remember his JSA episode. I think it was a 2-parter, and it was just amazing and great. And he really got. He like made Hawkman work. Like
he also
really
made the Green Lantern
Dr.
movie.
Fate in there too.
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah. you know, he didn't make it, but he was.
He was.
I like
did
the Green Lantern movie.
I did the set visit for Green Lantern, and he was the one that we were dealing with that would go around, showed us everything. Really got me excited for it. I mean, the OA, all the production art, everything. It looked like it would work. One thing that I remember though is that, you know, I was kind of saying, what's their version of like Rocket Raccoon? Chip?
Yeah, Chip.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you should have Chip in there. The kids would love that.
Yeah.
No, it's too kiddie. And then you look at Marvel doing Guardians of the Galaxy, Rocket Raccoon, Baby Groot,
People love
Breakout. Like,
is Chip not in it? Is Chip not?
Chip
in the
is
Green Lantern
not
movie?
in the Green Lantern.
I don't think so.
movie.
If he
Nope,
was, it was
he's
probably
not.
like in the background. He was this big. I don't remember.
You
I don't
know?
think he was in there.
But it's like, I just remember just noting that in the back of my head of like, you can't gamble scared. You know, like you have to go all in and make this stuff work.
Especially when you're already going to OA and you have a Birdman and like, you know. Like,
So it'll be interesting to see in the definitely at least in the next 6 to 8 months, as Justice League's shoot winds down, as Suicide Squad opens, as we start hearing more about Ben Affleck segueing to do his Batman movie, you know.
Want to know who also made the Green Lantern movie? Greg Berlanti. I heard he's doing all right these days.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So-
absolutely, yeah.
You know who wrote the League of
I'm
Extraordinary
the one who likes the Green
Gentlemen?
Lantern movie.
I
You're
know
the one who doesn't
you brought it up.
You know who wrote
Just an
the
easy
League of
joke.
Extraordinary Gentlemen movie? Was a comic book writer. It was James Robinson.
Right, so there you
So
go.
it's like, but you know, again, like, you know, studio politics can probably ruin anything. But
Right.
we're hopeful. We want to hear from you guys. What do you think? Are you more or less excited for DC films now that they're showing that there is going to be some creative overhauling, some shaking up of the powers that be, with Geoff Johns taking on a bigger role at DC Films? Let us know in the comments.
Cha-cha change.
Now let's talk about Marvel. But let's talk about
It's the best.
Marvel cast. Shane Black. Well, according to the internet, no, Iron Man 3 was horrible, even though it's not. It's fine.
I liked
but
it a lot.
Iron Man 3 director Shane Black is out there doing press for The Nice Guys, his new movie, which we gave a very rave review for on the site. I've not seen it yet. But he told some tales out of school.
Yeah.
And he said that initially there was a female villain in Iron Man 3, but the powers that be at Marvel, he's saying Marvel corporate, not Kevin Feige, made it a point to say it wasn't Feige, said, no, female villains won't sell toys. Now this jives with what we heard about Ike Perlmutter, the guy who, you know, I just picture him being like old man Potter from This Is, you know, It's a Wonderful Life. Like, you know, George Bailey, I'm gonna ruin your dreams.
Well, it also tracks with what we've heard about just Ray toys, right?
Yeah.
You know, Gamora, they wouldn't put Gamora or Gamora. How do you say her name?
Gamora.
Gamora.
Gamora, they won't put her on T-shirts.
Yeah.
Or they.
Black Widow stuff.
Yeah, so it's the same old story we keep hearing about.
Yeah.
But for that to affect the creative decisions on the film itself,
That's
pretty bad. So what do you think
We're
it
not
was?
supposed to swear, sorry.
Was it the Maya Hansen character?
Yeah, I bet you it was probably going to be more like that, or you know, or maybe do you think they would have gone like the Madame Mask kind of route or something? Like that would have been kind of
That would
fun.
have been killer. That would have been
Yeah.
I
awesome.
love that character. I don't know why. It's just she's got a mask and
Yeah.
a gun,
You know,
and that's it.
they
That's all
actually
she's
just
got.
relaunched the Iron Man comic book called Invincible Iron Man, and guess who's the first villain? Madame Mask.
Really?
So,
Right.
yeah.
Didn't she show up in Peggy Carter, or at least a version of her on Agent Carter? I thought she
I'm
did.
behind on that, so I don't know.
I haven't. Yeah, I'm behind too. I haven't seen the second season.
But yeah, it probably would have been a different version of like what became the Aldrich Killian character. And it would have been interesting too if it was like somebody that Tony Stark wined and dined and comes back to bite him.
Right. Which
Not
is-
too different from what Maya
Yeah.
Hansen was, but you know.
I wonder how much that affected the whole idea of the Mandarin as well as the villain. Was it going to be a female Mandarin, perhaps? You know,
it
like,
would have been interesting. You know,
Well, the thing is, there's never been a female Marvel villain.
Kate
on-
Blanchett and Thor Ragnarok might shake that up.
Yes, yeah, assumedly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's going to
who
happen.
do we think she is?
Probably Hela.
I don't know, who else? Yeah, Hela.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, you know, there were rumors that, well, not rumors, Sharon Stone came out and said she has a small role in a Marvel movie. We don't know if she means MCU. Does she mean like Wolverine 3?
Right.
I wonder, what if she's either like,
Is that my dad talking about Marvel? Like,
Yeah.
He actually means Batman, you know? Like,
turns out she's in Justice League. She's the president. But no, I started wondering, like, could she be Mistress Death? Because think about it, that would be so subversive to
Oh,
get
wow.
Catherine Tremell from Basic Instinct as Mistress Death, because
be
you would totally
great.
believe Josh Brolin, like, oh yeah, you know.
you don't suppose that Kate Blanchett would be playing the Enchantress, do you? Is she not like?
No, I heard that Tessa Thompson. No, she's supposed to play
she's
Valkyrie. Yeah,
Valkyrie, yeah.
I mean, could be.
I don't see her as Enchantress.
Enchantress-
It could work, but I see Kate Blanchett as someone who brings a lot of
something more
presence.
regal
She's a
like,
goddess,
yeah,
yeah.
like
Gravitas.
Galadriel from Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Take that, make her queen of the underworld,
Right.
give her a new hat, and then
Right.
that's Hela.
Her new hat.
But-
you got a new hat. Here you go. Oh, it's green.
You know
it's
that
lovely.
getup she
Thank
has?
you.
But you're right. I mean, but Marvel hasn't been all that great about getting us any progressive sort of casting, right? There aren't any.
Not until Black Panther now. That's where it's really like It's gonna.
Yeah, it took 14 movies.
It did.
Yeah, and there still hasn't been a woman who's had a heroic lead. Peggy Carter, Agent Carter, I suppose you could say, that being a TV show.
Jessica Jones.
But as far as the movies
in the
go,
movies.
Jessica Jones as well. Yeah.
The Wasp will actually end up being the first one because
and
it'll
she's
be
sharing the
Ant-Man
headline
and the Wasp. Yep.
with a man. So we have to wait for Captain Marvel if that movie ever gets made.
Oh, it's getting made.
Now, another thing that Shane Black said about the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 was that whole All Hail the King one shot was Marvel's apology to angry fans.
Yeah.
They didn't think that there would be a backlash like that against their take on the Mandarin.
Yeah.
And they're like, that to me,
Do you think he knows what he's talking about?
He could, yeah.
I just wonder
Yeah,
if
I
that's
feel
just
like
his
that's
perception of it, or if that's really what happened. You know,
But isn't it though? I mean, when they come out and they say, no, the real Mandarin's out there, it is apologetic.
I think that's very responsible of Marvel. There's one thing of, you made a creative decision, like stick to it, but it's also like when you realize that you've made your fans who you care about, and that's your audience, those are the people, paying for your salary.
Which fans?
You want to take.
Did you not like that?
I was personally fine with it.
Did you
like
it?
Well, what Shane Black said
Which
is
fan?
we
None
had
of the
no
fans
idea
like-
he was that iconic like Joker to change him
it's just
like
it's important to like the hardcore Marvel fan base,
if
which
it's
is
just
not the
80
general
people,
audience.
if it's just, but
you
look,
still,
like you write a story that 58,000 people read, and there's 80 comments that are negative.
No,
That's not representative of the fan base.
I feel like a lot of people were not upset, or were upset, or not okay with it, and I feel like it's good of Marvel to acknowledge that and to respect their fans, even if it's a smaller, hardcore fan base, and give them hope that the real thing that they actually do like is still out there. They could still put that in a movie.
They'll never see it.
They'll never see it. They'll never see a man shooting lasers from rings. And really, I think why you wouldn't do that is
Magic
'cause
rings, right?
it's
Magic rings from space?
Yes.
So he's a Green Lantern.
It's too similar to Thanos, who has a gauntlet with different colored gems on it that are probably going to shoot lasers, right?
Yeah.
It's just another of the it's like what happened to Liv Tyler in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah,
like,
Betty Ross.
Yeah, where's Doc Samson and where's the leader? All these, there's lots of threads that they're never going to follow up on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, there are. And also, I do want to point out, though, because, look, you're saying that Marvel is addressing fan complaints. We should point out that, we did say that DC also, they're addressing, like, trying to put a Band-Aid on something like BVS addressing the blowback over Man of Steel. Mm-hmm. So it is just to be fair that, look, Marvel did the same thing then basically with All Hail the King.
And
it was just on a much smaller level that maybe you didn't notice.
Yeah, I mean, of course that was them apologizing. It's funny how it took the director saying that for everyone to be like, oh, is that what that was? Like, of course, they want to like reassure. It was a reassurance to fans. But honestly, like, as far as that whole thing, I was fine with it because when you go like, oh, what were the classic like, Mandarin stories that everybody loves? You can't name them because they don't exist, right? But if you've been reading the comics all along, you were excited to see him on screen and didn't get it. So I see it. It's fine. I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
I'm not really cool with it.
Yeah.
It feels a little weak, right?
Yeah,
You made the decision to do this with
stand by your decisions.
Stand by Shane Black,
Yeah. Well, Black Panther.
Stand by your black.
Well, Black Panther is now gearing up. And Michael B. Jordan was cast, just curse of the podcast, big news that breaks after we already recorded last week's, is going to reportedly will play the bad guy in the movie, or one of them. And Joshua and I speculated last week that it's probably Eric Killmonger, which isn't his real name, but like I'm Killmonger. You can imagine. It's like Sinestro. I can't believe he turned bad. His name was Sinestro.
Right. Do we know he's the villain?
That's been some of the speculation and rumors, but it makes sense.
It would be cool to give him someone like to fight. Obviously, he could fight in Creed, and he's always a young, athletic guy who could go toe-to-toe with Black Panther.
Also playing against type a bit, because I don't think of Michael B. Jordan as a bad guy.
Yeah, he's played heroes.
He's always such a great guy.
I see him being sort of like having like righteous anger, that he's like upset that his father was killed in a war with Wakanda or something. Right. That's sort of my guess, like based on reading the comic books. And
it's his Khan.
Yeah, it's kind of like his Khan. I think Claw will have something to do with it too, maybe manipulating him to pit him against Black Panther.
Well, there've been several times that T'Challa has had to deal with like rebellion and within the kingdom as well, right? So would that character connect to that on some level?
I think so, yeah. I see that it being something like that of like Claw convinced Killmonger and his father to go up against the Black Panther and try and take Wakanda or something like that, and then they get his father gets killed, and so that makes Killmonger want to get revenge on T'Challa, and Claw uses that to try and get back him and steal his vibranium.
Right. Give me all the vibranium.
Get your hands off my vibranium.
I'll also say that the Black Panther comic book was the #1 comic book this past month,
right,
and number 2 has already sold out. So Black Panther fever is high right now.
Yeah, I read that first issue. It was
Who's
good,
the
but
writer?
it's all set up,
oh,
right?
it's that novelist dude.
Yes.
You're the guy who can pronounce names.
Yeah,
Well, I didn't read his name often enough to memorize
I can't. I'm not even gonna try, but
But you know who's
Sorry.
not going to be in Black Panther? John Boyega. And there was some speculation, internet fever, doing what it does best, speculation, as we call it here on Keeping It Real, because Kevin Feige followed John Boyega on Twitter. So he must want to work with him. I'm sure he does maybe someday, but Boyega's reps had to tell Hollywood Reporter, no, he get followed on Twitter. That's it.
is
He's
one
not in
mega
Black
franchise
Panther.
not enough?
Yeah, exactly. There was that. But any final Marvel thoughts before I move on to Robots in Disguise?
Is there anything
It
else?
kind of has a Marvel tie, a little bit.
Oh, it does
yeah.
actually, yeah. All right, let's move on to that, yeah.
All right, so when I was a boy, I liked me Rom Space Knight. I don't know why. It was just, his name was Rom Space Knight. He had a sword.
Yeah,
And he had a
I liked
sword,
it too,
right?
yeah.
And and Marvel did a comic of it, even though it was a Parker Brothers toy, I think, right? So they had to license, like they did with Star Wars for a while and G.I. Joe.
Was it Parker Brothers?
Parker Brothers, and then it became Hasbro.
Okay.
And that's how now Paramount basically has the film rights to Rom Space Knight.
Right.
And
they're creating a
announced
Transformers shared universe.
exactly
right.
with Mask, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Rom. Am I missing one? I feel like that's about it. And they got a hell of a writer's room. They have
Pulitzer
Brian
Prize
K.
winning.
Vaughan.
Yeah.
Michael Chabon, Pulitzer Prize winner.
yeah. And but Forbes had a theory about Transformers 5, which revealed this week that it's called Transformers: The Last Night.
Right.
Like, who's the knight? And then Forbes looked at the new kind of logo for Transformers: The Last Night. The lettering was different, and the sword coming down through it. And they looked at the lettering of the new Transformers logo and the lettering and the old Rom Space Knight Marvel Comics logo.
Right.
And it was similar.
Yes, very similar.
And that,
And there's a sword, right?
And Rom is a space knight, and he was, if for those who don't know, Rom was actually, a humanoid alien, and his world was under attack. At least this is in the Marvel Comics backstory. I don't know how much of this they can use, but anyways, his world's under attack by these dire wraiths, who are a certain color red that matches the certain color red that shows up in the Transformers: The Last Night logo. Wait for it. And in order to battle them, he had to be transformed into a cyborg who looked more like a robot than.
I always thought he was a robot. Yeah.
So he's made a vow he will not restore himself to humanity until he's actually defeated these guys.
Right.
And there were other space knights, but the idea of maybe he is the last one. These villains are so bad. It's a great theory about that's how you introduce him to this wide audience. Is okay. Well, they're not. There are plenty of robot-y kind of aliens out there, but they're not all Autobots or Decepticons. One of them is Rom, and they have to team up with him.
I could see that, in two more things that were in that article. One was that at the end of the last Transformers movie, he's got that sword that you see in the logo, and he goes off into space to find out, find whoever it belonged to. So that he could be looking for Rom, and he doesn't even know it yet. And then also, the color of his eyes was another clue. all Autobots, their eyes are blue, and all Decepticons are red, but in this poster of Optimus, his eyes were purple. So is that something, maybe a hint to the dire wraiths who can transform into other people?
Yeah.
Is that what we're looking at there?
What I will say with all certainty is never have any of us ever said of a Transformers movie, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm interested in seeing that.
Yes, it is now a watershed moment in this franchise where I'm like, interesting. I am looking forward to this Transformers movie.
Yeah. For now, we'll see.
For now, yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, so I already have my casting fanfic in mind. If this is Rom Space Knight, Liam Neeson, and I know it's almost a joke because Liam Neeson pretty much flipping do anything at this point, right?
Yeah.
But he was in Excalibur.
He
was
indeed.
He's a
in
guy
in
we know
Excalibur.
kicks ass. He's got gravitas. He was Qui-Gon Jinn, so he was basically a warrior knight.
I think he's too old. You
Well,
got to
he
think.
doesn't, it's just his voice. He's not running around in the suit.
I guess, but so
Yeah, Nimoy was the Transformers villain.
no,
Yeah.
but they're looking to spin it off into its own series, right? So
Well, maybe his voice changes when he gets in the suit. Then you go and you get some young actor to play him.
right, okay, kind of like the old Shazam live action show. Do you remember
Oh
that?
my God, yeah. Well, yeah. They changed the actors in that too.
Yeah, yeah.
They changed Shazams at one point. Both of them couldn't
The
act.
actor, but the guy who was Billy Batson and the guy who was Shazam or Captain Marvel were like the same age.
Yeah,
But when
yeah.
he would say Shazam, he'd suddenly become this
Yeah.
like more muscular guy.
He went from looking like basically like Robbie Benson to like he turned into like just an older version
Yeah,
of
Joe
him
Namath.
sitting at a bar. Yeah. It was
Did you
basically,
ever see these things?
Yeah,
No.
like Billy Batson was
I'm
got
just
like a
sitting
little kid. I think we have a copy somewhere in the
They're
library.
on YouTube.
Have
We
a
got to
video
show
on
it to you
YouTube.
afterwards.
Okay.
I think Warner Archive ended up putting them out because there was that, and then there was ISIS. And that was back in those days. The word ISIS was a fine word. Nowadays, not so much.
Right,
But
yeah.
trying to relaunch that now.
And Captain Marvel Billy Batson used to just ride around the countryside with the old wizard
Yeah.
in a van.
Yeah, because that's what people did. in
kinda
the
weird.
70s. They all drove around in vans. Like there
Captain America did that
Captain
too in the
America did that,
70s,
and then like wasn't there BJ and the Bear? Or something? No, that was a truck or something.
they were
But
truckers.
You were just all driving around cross country. Like that's all you did apparently in the 70s. But yeah, and then Billy Batson just going around in the orange and red sweater, orangey yellow and red sweater. But
was like
had the
Gilligan, he never
feathered
changed
hair.
his clothes, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what I watched again recently was the Doctor Strange TV movie from 1978,
Wow.
and it's
never saw
so
it.
bad, but I can't help but kind of like it. But most of it's so damn boring because it's just set in the hospital, and he's just going around like dealing with patients. Like there's an old drunken woman who like, I just need to sleep off the sauce tonight. Oh, Mrs. Hurley here or whatever, and and then like they actually, it's weird now given all this kind of the whitewashing blowback over the Doctor Strange feature film coming up, in that they addressed the issue of Wong they did a pretty good job actually. They just make him, he's an Asian American guy, suit and tie, he's a pupil of, it's not the ancient one, he's more of like a Merlin kind of type guy. Because the ancient one is in there, but it's only a voiceover.
Okay.
And it's Michael Ansara, the guy who did, Kang or whatever
Yeah,
from
Kang from Star Trek.
and everything. And but it's a really bad movie. But like, this is what they do. This is how they fight. Light, like blue light, red light, blue light. It was like they're just doing a weird dance at a disco.
Was it the pilot? Was it intended to be a
Yeah,
show?
it was a TV movie by Phil
So-
DeGuerre, who I think worked on Twilight Zone or something. But
So you can see why the hospital was the setup, but right?
well,
because
yeah,
gonna
but it
have
was
to
more
be-
like St. Elsewhere than Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
And then like they tried to do their the astral plane stuff, and it was just like it actually reminded me of the Star Trek episode, The Empath, where it's just like just make it a black stage and throw up some tarps and
Right.
you look like you're somewhere in space. It was like so cheap, but. It's got like dumb sweetness to it of like, they're trying, man. It's 1978
Right.
and they're trying to do Doctor Strange
Yeah.
as a TV movie.
Yeah.
This was around the same time they had the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man TV show.
yeah.
So,
Remember that well.
oh yeah. But Joshua's like,
Back in our day.
Yeah.
Joshua's waiting for us to turn into
We just
fossil.
lost 85% of our listeners, too.
I'm a 90s kid.
You know, hey, back in our day, you was happy when Thor and Daredevil showed up in a Hulk TV movie.
Yeah.
That was our shared universe.
No, when I grew up, I got it good because I got X-Men 90s cartoons, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman cartoons, and then then I was like a teenager. They got the new Star Wars prequels, which were and then now as I'm a young man, we'll call it. I get the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's great.
You don't know how tough times were for us.
Yeah, you know what that means though. Once you hit middle age, you're going to be living in like a dystopian future. It's going to be your days of future past. So enjoy. I'll already have shuffled off this mortal coil.
They'll have like the seventh Spider-Man reboot.
Yeah, exactly. One last thing on Transformers: The Last Night. I'm going to have to get used to saying that is Josh Duhamel, or Duhamel.
Josh Duhamel.
Duhamel
He's back.
Is back as Lieutenant Colonel Lennox.
How can you say the Killer Croc's name but not Josh Duhamel?
Because you know what? He's not Adewale Akini Agbaje.
Oh.
Wow.
Nor is he Gugu Mbatha.
I'm super excited that character is back. Yeah, I missed him.
Really? I wonder if he's going to be our tie to G.I. Joe then, if it's a shared universe. Like somehow, what if they make him one of the Joes, or
interesting.
Tyrese becomes Stalker or something, you know?
That sounds great. Like they know him. Like, let's call him some help, and then G.I. Joe show up. Like, my old
Dwayne
buddies.
Johnson rolls up, you know?
Yep.
Him and Wahlberg look at each other like, you up for some pain and gain? You know? We're going to do it.
Which was a Paramount movie, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
So
yeah.
they could conceivably...
It's going to have that kind of like lethal... What was the movie where Mel Gibson and Danny Glover both kind of showed up and looked at each other? It was like a comedy, and you heard the Lethal Weapon theme for like all of 5 seconds.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was no... they're passing each other, and you just hear... Did you see the trailer for the new Lethal Weapon TV show?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just find it ironic that trailer came out the same day that they canceled Rush Hour, which is another cop buddy show based on a cop buddy movie.
Right. And it came out the same day that, I believe it was the same day that Shane Black's movie came out, which...
Oh, no, it's not out yet, but all his interviews.
Oh, when all his interviews came out.
Yeah, for the Nice Guys. Yeah, because we asked him about that, and we have a clip up on the site, and he was basically like, nah. Because he was paired with Joel Silver, who produced the Lethal Weapon movie, so we got both of the guys, and like, yeah, they have nothing to do with the TV show, and they're just like, nah. Like it's happening. But yeah, it's just weird that Damon Wayans Sr., we have to say senior because his son is now a star, is playing Murtaugh.
Yeah.
The old man. And I'm just like, oh man, you were in Living Color, and you were what was this superhero movie? Blank Man.
Blank Man. Yeah. I loved that when I was a kid. I didn't get that it was like a parody. Like a joke. I was like, oh,
that was your generation's Condor Man / my real hero or some kind of hero. Yeah, the John Ritter one.
John Ritter, yeah.
He had the same kind of suit too, that red and black suit. All right, so we mentioned Star Wars. There was sort of a leak of, there was a leak of information this week, but like kind of sort of legitimately it was from a book publisher, and they put out stuff before they were supposed to do it.
Someone got fired.
We had to remove the images from the site. They were from the book publisher, like a book cover.
Yeah.
However, the character names are still out there, and I just want to rattle off a couple of them because I just thought it was interesting. Like it did confirm, obviously some of the character names that have been bandied about already. But, for example, Diego Luna's character is indeed called Cassian, but his full name is Cassian Ardor.
So he's not Biggs. Remember,
no,
there
he's
was
not,
a rumor that
he's
he was
not
Biggs.
Biggs.
Yeah.
And then there's a character named Baze, which just sounds like something you would say on Twitter. And then there is the K250, which is apparently the Enforcer droid played by mocap by Alan Tudyk.
An Imperial droid, seemingly, right?
And then Bodhi, which we knew was going to be Riz Ahmed's character's name. Let me skip ahead here. I think Orma is Donnie Yen's. Oh, and then so Ben Mendelsohn is playing Director Kremnick. Can you read that? These are Okay, look, I said this last week, I'll say it again. These aren't my usual glasses. I broke them. These are like $20 readers, which you know what they're good for? Not reading. I don't even know why I'm still wearing
Director Krennic. Director of the Imperial Military.
Didn't he have like, it's not like prime director, it's just director Krennic?
It's just Director Krennic, and then...
See, that doesn't sound as like Grand Moff Tarkin. Director Krennic just sounds like a guy who runs like the insurance program.
Right.
You know, like it's not as scary as, you know, a guy with a white cape and everything seems to deserve.
All these just sound like really weird Star Wars names.
I swear they just put them in a name generator and that's it. But yeah, they also said though that there's going to be a TIE Striker and a Rebel starfighter. And from what I understand, I didn't get to see the images; they were already removed.
Oh, I saw the TIE Striker. It looked pretty cool.
Isn't it kind of more like an inverted
design.
sort of TIE fighter?
Yeah, it's got almost like triangle wings, very sharp. Almost
Isn't
like a
that
TIE
like-
Interceptor, but they're not split.
Yeah.
But so
and then it was
wasn't that like Darth Vader's TIE fighter then? Didn't he had the fancy wings?
He had more sort of blocked out wings.
Yeah, his were more octagonal.
Yeah, and the
yeah.
center was also a lot thicker. But this seems more like a quick, deadly, striking strike type.
Now, we talked last week, Goldman was on. Terry just got back today from New Zealand, so that's why she hasn't been on for the last couple of weeks. But just throw out some video game news. We talked last week a lot about video games, but we found out after we recorded that 2 Atari classics are getting the big screen treatment. One of them has been in development for a while, but I believe it's going to be Centipede and Missile Command. Now, Missile Command makes a little bit more sense than a Centipede movie, but
I guess.
all right.
Human Centipede?
Yeah. Yeesh. You took it to that shared universe. And then Tetris, in a separate development, is being developed as a trilogy of thrillers. And this has, I believe it's a Chinese production, I think, if I remember that
It's going to be like Pixels, Take Two, like...
I just like, do we need any of these 3 movies?
No, I don't.
Like, who's the audience for that? Like, we grew up with Atari.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a Centipede movie.
Yeah.
I'd rather see a Pac-Man movie, except we kind of got that with
because
Pixels.
it's not going to bear any resemblance to the game, right? Like, it's not like the games have had a story or characters or anything.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like Battleship when they made Battleship into a movie, right?
Or you could
couple
say
of
even
in-jokes.
Warcraft, you know, like at least there are some characters. But
Yeah.
like,
Are these going to be live
broader.
action, or are they supposed to be like animated?
They're going to be
like,
live
fun?
action.
What? No one wants this. Stop it. Video game movies have it hard enough as it is.
Well, opening this weekend is a video game movie, the Angry Birds movie. Now, it got off to a good start overseas.
That's different. That's more than a video game movie, though, don't you think?
Well, that appeal, which
that's-
might be the smart way to go because it's
Yeah.
appealing to kids. They want that Minions money.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we'll see if this launches the movie franchise for Rovio that other studios haven't yet. Last week we talked at length about like Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed and all that. Now Terry has a set visit up, 3 pieces of her set visit to the Assassin's Creed movie. Go check that out on the site. IGN.com/movies. But one of the standout pieces of information from that was that, and this could, you know, change with editing and all that, but I believe that it said like something like 65% present day and 35% in the past. I believe I've got
Which
that right.
fans did not seem too happy to hear.
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled
means
about that, but
cheaper.
I guess I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess it makes sense of you know you're probably going to start the movie in present day, and they like capture Michael Fassbender's character or recruit him. I'm not really clear on that yet. And then they have to sort of train him and hook him up to this machine, and then I think it's probably going to be like 20 minutes or something before we actually
So it's
get.
kind of like the Matrix, like
to
he's
go
going
back.
into the Matrix.
Yeah,
then, basically.
and I don't think he spent.
And the movie is only 79 minutes long.
Yeah, so I can see that, of him just going in and like immersing himself in that world, trying to discover some stuff, then getting pulled back out, having to deal with that information,
Right.
going back in, you know, so I could see why that makes sense.
Okay.
Do you think the Angry Birds movie opening this weekend, it's tracking around the $45 million range. Do you think that will finally topple Captain America Civil War from the top spot? Or could we be looking at a three-peat for
What else is opening?
Civil War? Also, Neighbors 2. So that's the thing,
think
like they're
that-
both tracking in the
that 1-2
40s, so
punch. Yeah.
it could cut enough of the audience where
I
you
just
get your
think-
families and kids
Yeah.
to one. And
From when
kids.
I used to work in a movie theater, I just remember if there was a drought for a kids movie, like an animated movie, then when there actually one showed up, there would be just a rush, no matter how good or bad the movie was, and it would do a really crazy business.
Oh, yeah.
And now
big box
Zootopia is
office.
out of theater.
Yeah, so
You were
like
looking
parents
for-
are like almost like dying for a good
Yeah.
movie to bring their
I
kids
speak
to.
from
my
experience.
niece,
So-
my sister called me up last week. She's like, I got to take the kid to something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's really nothing else. She's seen Zootopia a couple of
Yeah.
times. And she's
Like,
like,
The
okay, what about...
Exorcist is playing in revival?
Well, she's like, look, how about Jungle Book? And I'm like, it's too intense for her. She's
Yeah.
like, I've talked to people who say, I took my 3-year-old. There's a difference, and you're a father, but there's a difference between how a 3-year-old will process fear as depicted in the movie and how a 6-year-old who's more developed
Yeah.
processes
There's also
it.
lazy parenting
Yeah.
too.
You're just like, oh, I just need a 2-hour break.
I remember
Yeah.
I remember going to see I Am Legend, and there was like a 3-year-old screaming bloody murder when Will Smith's family was killed in it.
no.
You know, like, so, you know, like you just
that
don't.
was
Certain
Jaden
movies
Smith.
just don't take kids to. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. That drought, like when a new kids film shows up, like
Yeah.
the parents are there
Yes.
and ready for it.
So I
you
think,
know.
I think that's going to open big.
And Neighbors 2 is I haven't seen it. I'm dying to
Neighbors
see
2
it.
Sorority Rising. Terry gave it said it was great.
Yeah,
Better
everyone
than the
loves
first.
it. I'm hearing such good things about
Yeah.
it. I love the first one.
Yeah.
And so I think that movie, I don't know how it's tracking, but I think it has.
It's tracking in the high 40s. Angry Birds is tracking a few million more. But again, that family kid factor, I mean,
Yeah.
really, it could end up being a higher
Yeah.
number for them. But we think then that 1-2 punch of those two will knock Civil War down to, like, say, third.
I could see it
I could see that.
happening, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to cry for Civil War. It's almost, I think it's at about $1 billion now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't cry for me.
It's either
Sokovia.
almost there or it's just hit it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
forget.
And Marvel has now, collectively, all their movies, $10 billion.
Wow.
Amazing.
13 movies, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because 14 will
Yeah.
be Doctor Strange.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
So,
They've made so many now that I'm beginning to lose track.
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So.
That's so crazy. And it's just the MCU movies. It's not even counting like X-Men and Blade and all other
Right. Oh,
franchises.
yeah.
Spider-Man. Yeah.
And we're going to start getting more now too, because aren't we going to start getting 3?
They're going to
here?
go up to 3 a year,
Right.
and then plus they have their TV presence, which counts as cinematic universe. By the way,
Ish.
check out on IGN. We ranked our top 10 heroes of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including both small screen and the big screen. The new Spider-Man made it.
Yeah,
I'm not
he
going to
made
say
it-
where.
made
I'm not
the
going to
cut,
say
yeah.
where, but go check that out.
I can't believe we went for the number 1 pick with fake Mandarin though.
I know. Well, look, Trevor
Trevor
Slattery
Slattery.
represents everything that's good and pure and awesome about Marvel movies. We all know that. So all hail the king. baby. Well, follow us on Twitter at Joshua Yehl, at Scott Collura. You don't have a the or an underscore or
Just
nothing.
Scott Collura, straight up,
Jim
old school.
Vejvoda. You can find IGN on multiple platforms, from YouTube to Roku to the PS4 to Xbox to Yo Mama. No, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. To all sorts of things. And drop us your thoughts at keepingitreal@ign.com. Check out our fellows across the pond there, the Superhero Show, Saturday mornings, well, Pacific time. And for all things movies, DC, Marvel, and otherwise, keep it here on IGN.